I sensed something was bothering Paula as soon as she crossed the threshold. That's what you get after almost 20 years of marriage. Is something wrong, Paula? I asked, as I watched her fiddling with the dinner preparations. No, nothing at all, she answered, perhaps too hastily. Another thing I'd learned during my time with Paula was that she couldn't be forced to open up about something unless she wanted to. Pestering her would be a waste of time at best, or lead to an argument at worst. I set the table and kept my mouth shut. I have to go back to work for a bit tomorrow night around 7, Bill, Paula informed me. I need to meet with some parents to discuss the lack of progress their children are making. No problem, I replied, remembering a conversation I'd had with Tim Brown earlier that day. Tim was the head technician at the middle school where Paula taught. He was in my body shop getting an estimate to repair a dent in his fender from an all-too-common interaction with a deer. He explained how ridiculous he thought it would be to evacuate the entire school tomorrow night while some special chem protection guys remove about 4 inches of asbestos insulation found on a heating pipe in the bus garage. The garage was nearly 100 yards from the school building, but the people in power didn't want any problems caused by the removal of the hazardous material. So the decision was made to evacuate the school, including the night watch staff. And now Paula tells me she has an appointment at the school for this evening. It didn't make any sense. Paula never lied about anything, especially something as trivial as this. And then it hit me. It might not be trivial at all. Where was she really going and why? Why did she feel the need to lie? I pondered this during dinner and much later. I finally made a decision and focused all my attention on spending the rest of the evening with my wife and our 2 teenage daughters. The next day, I invited my new employee, Steve Milko, into my office and explained what I wanted him to do. Just follow Paula and see where she goes and who she meets, Steve. She hasn't met you yet, so she has no reason to suspect you. I know it's not part of your job description, but it would be a favor to me, and I'll pay you overtime for the time you actually spend on this, I added. That settles it, boss. Steve grinned. I have no trouble recognizing your wife from this photo of her and your kids. I'll follow her and give you a full report tomorrow morning. I didn't like what I was doing, but I felt I had no choice. Paula was lying to me. I had to know why. In all the years I had spent with her, I had never once suspected her of telling an untruth. Now those years of trust had been shattered. Well, boss, I did a pretty good job last night, but you're not going to like what I found out, Steve began, sitting down in the chair in front of my desk. Your wife met some slippery guy at the Dewdrop Inn. They sat down at a table in the far corner. We bought a couple beers and sat at the one next to it. Who the hell is we, Steve? I demanded an answer. I assumed you understood that this was a sensitive matter and that I didn't want the whole town to know about it. Damn, boss. How long have you been married? I can't just up and walk out the door any time of day or night. I want to without telling my wife where I'm going or what I'm doing. If I try to lie to her, she'll figure it out, and then my ass will be on fire. Once Marcy heard my challenge, it couldn't be left to her. It worked out well because she hears better than I do, and she's a hell of a lot smarter than I am. Although I'll never admit that to her, Steve admitted. Just get on with the story, Steve, I replied briefly. As I sat down, I noticed that the guy had some old magazines on his desk. I couldn't tell what the magazines were, but I know what was in them, Steve continued. This asshole was blackmailing your wife, boss. He told her he'd show the pictures in the magazine to you and your kids, and even send some to your wife's principal if she didn't cooperate. How much money did he ask her for? What were the pictures? How much time did he give her? I quickly asked. What did Paula say to him? Now, boss. Remember, I'm just reporting back. Don't kill the messenger, okay? Steve replied. He told her he wanted her to be his mistress and gave her until Monday to make a decision. Your wife begged him to accept the money, but he only laughed at the suggestion. With all due respect, boss, he told her he wanted to have her whenever he was in the mood. There were no options. I had to hold Marcy so she wouldn't get up and smash the beer bottle against his coconut. She was so hot. I pondered what Steve had told me. Blackmail was easy to thwart. All it required was the truth. What truth could be so horrible that Paula would even consider such a despicable offer? Who is this poor bastard? I don't suppose you heard the guy's name? I asked hopefully. Boss, we got his name. It's Tom. That's what your wife called him, Steve replied. What a load of crap. That rules out Dick and Harry, but there's a lot of shitty men named Tom around here, I grumbled. Can you tell me what he looked like? A smile slowly stretched across Steve's face when he heard my question. I told you Marcy was a lot smarter than me, boss. Before they adjourned their little meeting, Marcy had a brilliant idea. Me getting up so she could take a picture of me on her cell phone. The only thing is, she missed my pretty face and took a picture of the asshole blackmailing your wife. I got it right here. Steve smirked, pulled his cell phone out of his pocket, pressed a couple buttons, and held it out to me. Here's the dude. The picture wasn't the best, but I recognized the man immediately. It was Thomas Mann, an educator since 2000, recently appointed vice principal at the high school where Paula worked. He almost got the job because Paula complained about what she thought was inappropriate behavior between Mann and a freshman last year. He then told Paula in private that she would regret her action. Obviously, he was trying to fulfill his promise. There were a lot of questions. What was he blackmailing Paula with? Why the old magazines? How would Paula react to this threat? Would she come to me for help? Would she give in to the blackmail? I knew the answer to the last question. Over my dead body. It was Thursday morning. I had a few days to think about the situation and try to come up with a good solution. If anything, I would visit the jerk on Monday and end his dreams of sleeping with my wife, or any other woman for that matter. It just seemed like a bad idea to me to risk getting arrested. Then whatever he uses to blackmail Paula would be made public. How do you stop a blackmailer? That night, Paula was quiet and preoccupied. Even our daughters noticed it and asked her if something was wrong. Paula gave some lame excuse about thinking of new ideas for a literature course she was taking. Somehow the girls reconciled. That night, lying in bed, Paula was all over me. She gave me everything a man could ask of his wife, and would have continued if I had been able. Then she laid her head on my shoulder, and pressing herself tightly against me, confessed her infinite love. What was happening made her fear that she might lose me. This I saw very clearly. The next day, as soon as I got home, there was a knock on the front door. My oldest daughter, Chris, opened it and called out to me. It turned out to be a courier with a package for me and another for my daughters, Lisa. By the time I signed for it, Chris had already opened the package and was going through the contents. They are old magazine pictures of naked women, and one of them is Mom, Chris shrieked. Let me see, Lisa insisted, snatching the pages out of her sister's hands. Wow, it's Mom, and she's showing everything. Look how young she is. She was beautiful, agged Chris, peering over her sister's shoulder. Daddy, when did Mom take these pictures? Why didn't she ever show them to us? Why did we get them in some kind of postal package? Your mother will be back soon. You have to ask her these questions. Now let's sit down and look at all this quietly and discuss what we think about it all, I suggested. 20 minutes later, Paula walked through the front door with a sigh. She seemed to have the weight of the world on her shoulders. Then she noticed the three of us sitting on the couch with pictures spread out on the coffee table. Oh no, was all she could squeeze out as the realization of what we were looking at came over her. Tears ran down her cheeks. Mom, come over here and look at these pictures we just got, Chris insisted. You never told us about this, and we're all very upset. I'm so sorry, Chris. Those awful pictures were a huge mistake I made years ago. You weren't supposed to see them, exclaimed a very upset Paula. Mom, you're so beautiful. We are upset that you never told us about them and never showed them to us. We want to make copies and hang them on the wall. I can't wait to show my girlfriends how hot my mom was, Chris exclaimed. Yes, Mom. Dad says you were even prettier in real life than you are in these pictures. Why didn't you tell us about them, Mom? You're so cool, Lisa giggled, running up to her mother and hugging her. Paula was clearly stunned for the second time in the last few minutes. Her tears stopped flowing as her daughters showered her with love and compliments. She turned her attention to me. Honey, you're still beautiful, I told her as I stood up and walked over to her. In fact, you look even sexier today than you did years ago, and that's saying a lot. I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her against me. She buried her face in my chest and sobbed a little. then looked up at me. "Don't you hate me, Bill?" Paula whispered. "Do you still love me?" "More than ever, sweetheart." I laughed and kissed her soundly. "Now that we're done with all this nonsense, Mom, come over here and tell us all about these pictures," Chris insisted. "We're dying to hear the story behind those pictures in the magazines. Were you a model or something?" "My father died when I was a freshman in high school. Remember I told you girls about that? I already told you that I made my own money for the first 3 years of college. My mother didn't have much money left over. Yes, I posed for the photographers who sent pictures to those magazines and those calendars that men like to look at. They weren't exactly respectable family magazines, but they weren't really bad either," Paula quickly added. "By posing and working weekends as a waitress, I largely paid for my college. At the end of my junior year, an uncle I never met died and left me over $10,000. I was able to stop posing. I finished as a waitress and graduated from college the following year," Paula concluded. "Why didn't you ever tell us about this?" "Why didn't you show us the pictures, Mom?" Chris asked. "You look amazing. I hope in a couple years I have a figure like yours." "I think it's obvious, Chris. I'm not proud of what I've done. I feel like I betrayed you kids and also your father, even though I didn't know him at the time and you two, of course, hadn't been born yet," Paula explained. "I was determined to get a degree and a decent job no matter what it took, so I jeopardized my future by being so determined. I lived in fear that your father would someday find out the truth and leave me. I wouldn't blame him if he did." "You don't seem to know much about Dad," Lisa laughed. "He couldn't tear himself away from those pictures and told us how incredible you were. He said we should be proud to have such a beautiful and smart mom." "He said that?" Paula marveled. "All these years I've been worried about him finding out, and it turns out it excites him." "Mommy!" both girls squealed in unison. "We're just little girls, Mom," Chris laughed. "Save that stuff for the bedroom, please." "Sorry, girls. Bill, will you help me unzip my dress?" Paula asked, taking my hand and heading for the bedroom. "Don't forget our dinner, lovebirds!" shouted Chris, clearly not fooled by the zipper excuse. The next day was Saturday. I called Steve's wife, Marcy, and asked if she would be willing to accompany me to a meeting with the school principal, Mrs. Gwen Wilder. When I explained exactly what I had in mind, she jumped at the opportunity. I then called Miss Wilder at home and made an appointment for the afternoon, explaining that it was extremely important. The three of us sat at the large desk in Wilder's office. I pulled out a package and placed it on the desk. "Mrs. Wilder, I want you to look at these pictures and then listen to a little drama that Marcy overheard," I began. "When you print them out, you'll see that they're old magazine pictures of my wife, Paula, and you'll probably notice that she's posing nude." "And that she has a damn fine figure," Marcy exclaimed, flipping through the stack. "I'd really like to meet your wife. She's just terrific." "I find it odd that you would bring that to my attention, Bill. Paula had a very good reputation at our school. Her work was excellent, and she received nothing but accolades." "Why risk showing me those racy pictures at all?" Gwen Wilder asked. "Because they exist, Mrs. Wilder. That means they could be used against her at some point in the future, and I'm afraid that could be the very near future," I added. "Paula helped pay her way through college by posing for these magazines. She's not particularly proud of them. They are what they are. You can decide if they violate her contract in any way. She wants to continue working at your school, but she will not apologize or beg to leave. Moreover, she won't be blackmailed by some cowardly jerk," I said firmly. "Marcy will now tell you what she overheard and is willing to testify under oath." It was Monday morning, and Paula was clearly agitated. "That asshole is expecting my answer today, Bill. I told you about the deadline. I don't understand why he sent the pictures to you and the girls before that deadline," Paula said thoughtfully. "Maybe he thinks that my fear of being fired will be enough to make me submit to his demands." "That's probably true, Paula," I agreed. "Still, he'd know that you'd ask me who sent those pictures and I'd tell you. That would seem to put him at some risk and make it less likely that I would agree to his proposal," she reasoned. "Who knows what that crazy bastard is thinking, Paula?" I asked. "Don't try to understand a sick mind." "You're probably right, but I find it strange," Paula continued. "I wonder if I'll get a job after today. Well, there's only one way to find out. I love you, Bill. Thank you for understanding and forgiving me. I pulled Paula tightly against me, kissed her, and opened the door in front of her. Paula was working with several students on the script for the school play she put on each year. Class was over for the day, and the school was almost empty. I stood backstage at the back of the stage and just watched. About 15 minutes into the rehearsal, Mr. Thomas Mann burst through the door, swearing like a madman. His anger was directed at Paula. "You miserable bitch! I got fired because of you! I have enough sense to knock some goddamn respect into you! You're nothing but a fucking whore!" he shouted, approaching Paula with a clenched fist. Unfortunately for him, I was ready for something like this and got in front of Paula before he could reach her. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the school children scattering in terror. It worked perfectly for my purposes. Mann's surprise was complete. I continued to finish the crazy bastard off right on the floor. Then Mrs. Wilder and the school security guard jumped onto the scene and stopped abruptly, looking first at Mann's prostrate body and then at me. She simply nodded. She then told her security guard to call 911 and get the police and an ambulance. After Mann was wheeled out on a gurney, swearing like an old sailor, Paula took me aside. "Don't treat me like an idiot, Bill," she began. "Too many things don't add up in this mess. You seemed to know what to expect before it happened, and nothing surprised you. You were here because you thought Tom might come after me. When he met with me that night to show me the pictures and try to blackmail me, he only had 2 magazines with 4 pictures in them. He didn't know about the other pictures of me that were in that mailing. You and the girls got every magazine and calendar I had ever been published in. Tom didn't have all of them. I'm pretty sure he didn't. The principal just told me that the testimony of someone named Marcy Milko would be proof that Tom was trying to blackmail me for sex. The only Milko I've ever heard of is some guy you recently hired who I've never met. The only time Tom and I met on this occasion was at the Dewdrop. Now I'm remembering the strange acting couple in the next booth that night. What are you hiding from me, Bill? Paula demanded. I hoped Paula would never connect the dots. She was too smart to be fooled. I had no choice but to throw myself on her mercy. Paula, you're not the only one living with a secret all these years. Please listen and try to understand. I had just graduated from trade college and was working my first job. As was the custom back then, guys always hung women's pictures on the walls in the store. They glued them on their toolboxes and just about anything else they could fit on. You were one of those pin-up models. I couldn't stop looking at you. I started buying all the magazines like that, looking for more pictures of you and reading everything I could about you. In one of them, I found out that you were attending a big state college back east. As sad as it sounds, I started traveling to the state capital on weekends, hoping that your college was there and that I would see you in person. There was no real reason to even think it was the college you went to, or even that you went to college at all, I admitted. I had these thoughts that I would find you, and within an hour you'd be naked in my arms. Incredibly, I found you after the soccer game. Remember? It was your senior year and you were no longer modeling, or whatever you call it. You do remember that it took me 2 whole years to finally get you naked and feel you in my arms, right? I was head over heels in love with you long before that. I knew school was closed the night you said you had to go back there, but you were actually dating Man. My new boyfriend at work was watching you, and luckily, he brought his wife Marcy with him. They heard everything and told me. I sent these pictures to the girls and myself so you would stop being afraid and send Man to hell. Those pictures were from my personal stash. On Saturday, I took Marcy to the manager's office and told her the whole story. I knew that if Man tried to show her those pictures, it would be the final proof that he was a blackmailer and she would fire him. I was afraid he might try to get back at you later, so I stayed close to keep an eye on you, I explained. Why didn't you ever tell me you knew about those pictures when we met? Or ever afterward, Bill? Paula asked. I was afraid you'd think I was a pervert or a stalker, and I guess technically I was. Once I found you and realized that as beautiful as your body was, your soul was even better, and I couldn't risk losing you. I was afraid that one day you'd find out I spent 8 months looking for you at Penn College, and think I was crazy, I admitted. I just love you very much, Paula. All right. Didn't you risk showing those pictures to the girls, Bill? You realized you could have made them hate me, didn't you? Paula asked. No, it never occurred to me. I made sure I'd be there when they looked at them. I knew they would never hate you. I also figured they would study my reaction to those pictures and use that as a guide. Your girls could never hate you, and neither I nor anyone else had the power to do so. Their reaction was as you saw it. They have a hot mom and I have an awesome wife. I'd love to hear you tell the girls the rest of the story tonight, Bill, Paula said businesslike. They know my secret, and now you're going to tell them yours, so they won't have to live in fear anymore. They'll realize that if I hadn't posed for those pictures, we'd never have met. I just hope you don't scare them away.